Sir, could you please pretend to be my daddy? The beggar girl whispered, her small hand clutching at Zeke's worn coat sleeve. The words cut through the whiskey fog in his mind like a blade through burlap. Ezekiel Thornfield swayed on his feet, blinking hard at the child who had appeared beside him in the alley behind Murphy's saloon. Dust motes danced in the amber light spilling from the establishment's back door. 3 men blocked the alley's mouth. Their boots scraped against packed earth as they moved closer, shadows stretching long across the ground. The girl pressed, herself against Zeke's side, her breathing quick and shallow. "Hand over them papers, little rat." The largest man's voice carried the weight of authority and menace. His hand rested on his gun belt. Zeke's vision sharpened. The child couldn't be more than 11, all sharp angles and defiant eyes. She clutched a leather satchel against her chest like it contained her very soul. Those eyes, green as spring grass after rain. They reminded him of someone he'd lost. "This your kid, stranger?" The enforcer stepped forward. His companions flanked, him vultures circling wounded prey. The girl's fingers tightened on Zeke's sleeve. Her whole body trembled against his leg. Something in that desperate grip awakened a part of him he'd thought dead and buried 5 years past. "Yeah." The word came out rougher than he intended. "She's mine." The lead enforcer's eyes narrowed. "Funny thing, Thornfield. Didn't know you had family in these parts." They knew his name. That should have worried him more than it did. The whiskey still dulled the edges of his thinking, but not enough to miss the threat hanging in the air like smoke. "Got a problem with that? Better keep that daughter of yours out of grown-up business. Next time we might not be so friendly." The men retreated into the street, their boots echoing off the buildings. Zeke waited until their footsteps faded before looking down at the girl. She hadn't moved from his side. "They're gone." He tried to step away, but she held fast to his coat. "Thank you." Her voice was small but steady. "I'm Magnolia. Maggie." "What do you want, kid?" She released his sleeve and stepped back, squaring her shoulders. Dirt streaked her face, but her spine was straight as a fence post. "I need help. Real help. Find someone else. There ain't nobody else." She opened the satchel slightly, revealing papers and documents. "My mama died 6 months back. Rose Rosewood. She told me things before she passed, important things." Zeke's head was clearing, the whiskey losing its hold. The girl's words carried weight beyond her years. He'd seen that kind of premature wisdom before, carved into faces by loss and hardship. "What kind of things?" "About my daddy, my real daddy." Maggie's chin lifted. "Jonathan Blackwood, the man who founded this town and found the copper." Everyone knew that name. Blackwood had been dead 3 years now, but his legacy lived on. In every mine shaft and business deal in Copper Creek, the girl was either lying or delusional. Blackwood never had any children. He had me. She pulled out a document, yellowed with age. Mama kept this hidden, birth certificate with his name on it. Zeke took the paper, squinting at it in the dim light. The writing looked authentic, the seal official. But forgeries weren't uncommon in frontier towns where records were sparse and verification difficult. "Even if this is real, what's it to me? Mayor Grimsby says it's fake. Says I'm just a street rat making up stories." Maggie's voice hardened. "He's been taking land from folks, forcing them out. When parents fight back, their children go missing. Like the Chen boy tonight." She nodded. "Tommy Chen, he's the 3rd one this month." Zeke handed back the document. The girl's story was either elaborate fiction or dangerous truth. Either way, it spelled trouble for anyone who got involved. "I got a proposition for you, mister." Maggie's eyes held his. "Help me prove who I am. Get me a legal hearing. When I claim what's mine, I'll split it with you. Half of everything. And why would I do that? Because you got the look of a man who's lost something important. And because you didn't walk away when those men wanted to hurt me." Her words hit closer to home than he cared to admit. Emma's face flashed in his memory, green eyes like spring grass, the same stubborn tilt to her chin when she'd made up her mind about something. "I ain't looking for a partner, kid." Neither, Am I? But sometimes we don't get to choose what finds us. A commotion from the street interrupted them, shouting voices, the sound of furniture being thrown. Zeke and Maggie moved to the alley's mouth and peered around the corner. Mayor Grimsby's men were dragging the Chen family from their laundry. Mrs. Chen cried out as they forced her husband into shackles. The charges would be fabricated, but that wouldn't matter. Justice in Copper Creek belonged to whoever had the most guns. "Where's the boy?" one of the enforcers demanded. "We don't know," Mrs. Chen sobbed. "He was here just minutes ago." But Tommy Chen was nowhere to be seen. The 10-year-old had vanished into the night like smoke. Zeke watched the scene unfold with growing unease. The efficiency of it spoke to practice. This wasn't the first family torn apart by Grimsby's methods. "Now you see," Maggie whispered beside him. "This is what happens to folks who don't play along." The enforcers loaded the Chen parents into a wagon. Mrs. Chen's wails echoed off the buildings as they drove toward the jail. In the morning, their business would belong to someone else. Their son would be forgotten. Another casualty of Copper Creek's version of progress. "My mama tried to stand up to them," Maggie continued. "She got sick real sudden after that. Fever. And shaking. Dr. Hartwell said it looked like poison, but she couldn't prove nothing." Zeke felt the familiar weight of guilt settling on his shoulders. Another family destroyed, another child left alone. The pattern was as predictable as sunrise. "I can't save every kid in this town. I ain't asking you to. Just asking you to help me save the ones we can." She was asking him to care again. To risk his heart on something that might end in more loss and pain. The smart thing would be to walk away, find another bottle, and forget this conversation ever happened. But those green eyes wouldn't let him go. Emma's eyes, staring at him from a stranger's face. "What exactly are you proposing?" "You pretend to be my daddy. Just for a little while. Long enough to get me that legal hearing. Help me prove I got rights to the Blackwood land." Maggie's voice grew stronger. "When I win, we use the money to expose what Grimsby's been doing. Save the other children. And if you lose, then at least we tried. At least somebody cared enough to stand up." The weight of decision pressed down on him. 5 years of running, and drinking hadn't erased the memory of his failures. His wife and daughter were still dead. His inability to protect them still ate at him like acid, but maybe that was exactly why he couldn't walk away from this girl. "All right." The word came out before he could stop it. "But we do this my way. Business only. No getting attached." Maggie's smile could have lit up the whole alley. "Yes, sir. Daddy." The word hit him like a physical blow. He'd thought he'd never hear it again, never wanted to hear it again, but somehow from this fierce little stranger, it didn't sound like a curse. It sounded like hope. 3 days passed before Zeke understood what he'd gotten himself into. The girl ate like a starved wolf, slept like a kicked dog, and watched him with those green eyes that cut through his defenses. She'd found a corner in his rented room above the general store. Made herself small in the space, quiet as dust settling. But her presence filled every inch of air between them. "Proper daughters don't wolf down their food," he told her over. "Breakfast. They use forks. Say please and thank you." Maggie's hand froze halfway to her mouth, biscuit crumbling between her fingers. "Yes, sir." The formality stung. He'd been harder on her than necessary, trying to keep distance where distance couldn't exist. She was learning his moods, stepping careful around the broken places in him. "Practice reading this." He slid a newspaper across the table. "If you're Blackwood's daughter, you'd have had schooling." She bent over the pages, lips moving silently. Her finger traced each word with fierce concentration, stubborn chin set against defeat, just like Emma used to do. The thought came unbidden, unwanted. He pushed back from the table and walked to the window. Copper Creek stretched below them, morning light painting the buildings gold. Everything looked peaceful from this height. The ugliness hid itself well in daylight. "Papa Zeke?" Maggie's voice was soft, uncertain. He turned. She'd abandoned the newspaper, was watching him with careful eyes. "What is it?" "Nothing. Just practicing how it sounds." The words settled between them like seeds in fertile ground. Dangerous seeds that might grow into something he couldn't uproot later. "We should visit Dr. Hartwell today. She might help with your case." Dr. Eloise Hartwell ran the only medical practice in town from a small building near the church. Her reputation for discretion matched her skill with medicine. If anyone would speak truth about what was happening in Copper Creek, it would be her. They found her treating a ranch hand's broken arm. She worked with efficient movements, her graying hair pulled back severe from her face. Her eyes missed nothing. "Mr. Thornfield, and this must be your daughter." The lie came easier each time it was spoken. Maggie moved closer to his side, playing her part. "We need to speak with you, Doc, about some troubles in town." Dr. Hartwell finished with her patient and led them to her private office. The room smelled of carbolic acid and dried herbs. Medical texts lined the shelves, their spines worn from use. "It's about the missing children," Maggie said before Zeke could speak. The doctor's hands stilled on her desk, her eyes sharpened, studying them both with new intensity. "What do you know about that?" "Enough to want it stopped." Zeke kept his voice level. "We heard Tommy Chen disappeared after his parents were arrested. Third child this month." Dr. Hartwell's voice was bitter. Families refuse to sell their land, suddenly find themselves facing trumped-up charges. Parents get locked up. Children vanish. Where do they go? Deep mines, 20 miles northwest of town. Grimsby's got an operation there that ain't on any official records. The doctor's jaw tightened. "Uses children because they're small, expendable. Adult miners demand better conditions, better pay." Maggie's hand found Zeke's sleeve. Her grip was tight, desperate. "Can you prove it?" "Been trying for months, but Grimsby's got the sheriff, the judge, half the town council in his pocket." Dr. Hartwell leaned forward. "What's your interest in this? You've been in town less than a week." Zeke felt the weight of decision settling on him again. Trust was a luxury he'd avoided for 5 years. But this woman carried the same quiet determination he saw in Maggie's eyes. "The girl's got documents saying she's Jonathan Blackwood's daughter. We're trying to get her a legal hearing." "Blackwood?" The doctor's eyebrows rose. "That would make her heir to half the mineral rights in this territory." "If the papers are real." Dr. Hartwell studied Maggie with professional interest. "May I see them?" Maggie opened her satchel, hands trembling slightly. The birth certificate looked fragile in the morning light streaming through the window. "The paper's right. Ink's aged proper." The doctor handed it back. "But Grimsby won't let this stand without a fight. If you're serious about this claim, you better be prepared for war. We just want what's legal and right." Legal and right don't mean the same thing in Copper Creek, not anymore. They left the doctor's office with more questions than answers. The town felt different now, weighted with hidden threats. Every face might hide an enemy. Every shadow might conceal watching eyes. That afternoon, Zeke taught Maggie to ride. She perched on his horse's back like a bird ready to take flight, hands gripping the reins with white-knuckled determination. "Sit deeper. You're fighting the horse instead of working with it." She adjusted her position, found her balance. "The mare," responded, stepping forward with more confidence. "Good. Now remember, if trouble comes, you get on this horse and you ride. Don't look back." "What about you?" "I can take care of myself." Her green eyes flashed with something he recognized. The same stubborn loyalty Emma had shown when other children picked on smaller kids. "We're partners now. Partners don't leave each other behind." The conviction in her voice unsettled him. She was getting attached, building dreams around their temporary arrangement. When this was over, when she had her inheritance or lost her claim, she'd expect him to stay. He couldn't explain that staying meant caring, and caring meant losing everything all over again when fate decided to take it away. That evening, they walked to the land office. The clerk, a nervous man named Pembroke, agreed to schedule Maggie's hearing for the following week. Judge Wickham would preside, as was proper for matters of inheritance. "You sure about this, mister?" Pembroke's hands shook as he filled out the forms. Judge Wickham don't take kindly to frivolous claims. It ain't frivolous. But walking home. Zeke felt the first stirrings of real doubt. The pieces were falling into place too easily. Grimsby was letting them proceed without interference, which meant he was confident the outcome would favor him. Maggie walked beside him in comfortable silence. She'd stopped trying to fill every quiet moment with chatter, learning to read his moods, giving him space when the memories pressed too close. "Tell me about your real daughter," she said suddenly. Zeke's steps faltered. The question cut deep, hit bone. "Why?" "Because sometimes you look at me and see somebody else, and sometimes that makes you sad." Her perception was unsettling. Children noticed everything, forgot nothing. Emma had been the same way, seeing straight through his attempts to shield her from difficult truths. Her name was Emma. She was 8 when she died. How? Wagon train attack, 5 years ago. Her and her mama both. Maggie absorbed this in silence. When she spoke again, her voice was careful. "I'm sorry that happened to them. And to you. It's done. Can't change it. But you still carry it around. Like I carry around what happened to my mama." The comparison hit harder than he expected. He'd thought his grief was different, more complex than a child could understand. But loss was loss. Pain was pain. Age didn't make it easier to bear. They reached their building as the sun painted the sky red. Maggie climbed the stairs ahead of him, her small form casting long shadows on the walls. That night, research consumed them. Zeke pored over land records while Maggie practiced her reading. The lamp burned low, casting dancing shadows across the pages. The deeper he dug, the more disturbing the pattern became. Original families were disappearing from the records entirely. Deaths that looked accidental, sales that seemed forced, and always Grimsby's name appeared on the new deeds. "Papa Zeke?" He looked up. Maggie had set aside her book, was watching him with concerned eyes. "You found something bad, didn't you?" "Maybe. It's complicated." My mama always said complicated was just another word for scary. She wasn't wrong. The implications of what he was seeing would keep him awake tonight and probably many nights to come. Then he found it, buried in a stack of territorial records, almost missed in the faded handwriting. Thornfield Marcus, land purchase, Section 12, Range 4, paid in, full, his brother's name, his brother's money. The land his family had been traveling to claim when they died. The room tilted around him. Blood roared in his ears as the pieces crashed together. His family hadn't been killed by random bandits. They'd been murdered by Grimsby's men because they were legitimate landowners coming to claim property. "What is it?" Maggie's voice seemed to come from far away. "My brother. He bought land here. That's why we were coming to Copper Creek." His hands shook as he held the document. "Grimsby had my family killed." Maggie was beside him instantly, her small hand on his arm. "You sure?" "It all fits. The timing, the location. They weren't random victims. They were obstacles." The grief he'd carried for 5 years transformed into something harder, sharper. Justice had a name now, a face, a target. "We're going to stop him," Maggie said with quiet certainty. "For your family, for mine, for all of them." Her words should have comforted him. Instead, they filled him with dread. She was talking about them as a permanent team, a family united in purpose, but families could be destroyed. He'd learned that lesson in blood and loss. The hearing was set for Monday. 3 days to prepare for what would likely be a rigged proceeding. 3 days to figure out how to protect this girl who'd wormed her way into the damaged spaces of his heart. 3 days to accept that caring about someone again might be the bravest thing he'd ever done. Or the stupidest. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows with promises of storms to come. The courthouse reeked of tobacco and corruption. Judge Wickham sat behind his bench like a vulture perched on carrion, his black robes hanging, loose on his thin frame. The morning light struggled through dirty windows, casting everything in shades of disappointment. Zeke adjusted his collar, the only clean shirt he owned, scratching against his neck. Beside him, Maggie sat straight-backed, in her borrowed dress, hands folded in her lap. Dr. Hartwell had found the clothing somewhere, along with shoes that almost fit. Mayor Grimsby occupied the front row with his lawyer, a slick man from the territorial capital. His confidence filled the room like smoke from a green wood fire, choking and obvious. "State your claim," Judge Wickham's voice carried the authority, "of purchase decisions." Maggie stood, her small frame dwarfed by the courtroom's imposing architecture. "I'm Magnolia Rosewood, daughter of Jonathan Blackwood. I claim inheritance of his estate and mining rights." "Produce your evidence." She handed over the documents with steady hands. The judge barely glanced at them before passing them to Grimsby's lawyer. The dismissal was choreographed, rehearsed. "These papers are clearly forgeries, poor ones at that." The lawyer's smile was all teeth and malice. "This child is a street orphan attempting fraud. I can prove who I am." Maggie's voice cracked slightly. "Dr. Hartwell knew my mama. She can testify." "The testimony of one woman hardly constitutes proof of paternity." Judge Wickham's gavel tapped against the bench, "especially when the alleged father is deceased and cannot confirm or deny these claims." The proceedings continued with mechanical precision. Witnesses who might have supported Maggie's claim were absent, either intimidated or paid off. Those who spoke did so against her, painting Rose Rosewood as a woman of questionable character who would fabricate documents for money. Zeke watched, his daughter's shoulders tighten with each blow, her dreams crumbling like adobe in a flash flood. But she didn't break, didn't cry. She absorbed each attack with the resilience of someone who'd learned early that life rarely offered mercy. "Furthermore," Judge Wickham continued, "this court questions the suitability of Mr. Thornfield as guardian, a man of no fixed address, no steady employment, and documented problems with alcohol." Heat rose in Zeke's chest. They'd done their research, dug up his failures and weaknesses, used them as weapons against a child who'd never harmed anyone. "Given these circumstances, I'm placing the minor child in the care of the Copper Creek Orphanage until proper arrangements can be made." Maggie's face went white. The orphanage was Grimsby's operation, everyone knew it. A place where inconvenient children disappeared into the mining tunnels. "Your Honor, if I may." Zeke stood, his voice carrying across the courtroom. "You may not. This proceeding is concluded." The gavel fell with the finality of a coffin nail. Grimsby's men moved forward to collect Maggie, their hands reaching for her like claws. Then the courthouse doors burst open. Sheriff Patricia Sterling strode in, badge gleaming on her chest, federal marshals flanking her. Her presence changed the air pressure in the room, authority crackling around her like electricity before a storm. "This proceeding is suspended, pending federal investigation." Her voice cut through the stunned silence. "Judge Wickham, you're under arrest for corruption and conspiracy." Chaos erupted. Grimsby's lawyer started shouting about jurisdiction. The judge began gathering papers with shaking hands. But Sterling's marshals moved with practiced efficiency, securing the courtroom and its occupants. "Ezekiel Thornfield." Sterling's eyes found his across the room. "I've been looking for you for 5 years." The words hit him like a physical blow. No one had been looking for him. No one cared where he'd drifted or what he'd become. "You knew my brother Marcus." "I did, and I know what happened to your family." Sterling's expression was grim. Marcus was carrying evidence when he died. Evidence that would have exposed Grimsby's operation 3 years ago. The courtroom spun around Zeke. Marcus had been investigating Grimsby even then, trying to build a case that would protect innocent families. His death hadn't been coincidental. It had been assassination. "Your family died protecting information that could save dozens of children," Sterling continued. "I need your testimony to make the charges stick." Beside him, Maggie stood, frozen. Her green eyes darted between the marshals and Grimsby's men, calculating escape routes from a situation that had spiraled beyond her control. "The girl comes with me," Zeke said. "That's not your decision to make." Judge Wickham's voice shook, with barely controlled panic. "The court has already ruled. Your court has no authority here." Sterling's hand rested on her gun. "Federal jurisdiction supersedes local corruption." Grimsby finally spoke, his voice smooth as oil on water. "Sheriff Sterling, I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding without involving federal authorities. Copper Creek has always been a peaceful community. Peaceful communities don't traffic children for mind labor." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Grimsby's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculating predator beneath. "That's a serious allegation. I hope you have proof." "We do." Sterling's smile was sharp as a blade. "Your former associate in Silver City was very cooperative once he understood the alternative." Grimsby's face went ashen. The web of corruption he'd built was unraveling, thread by thread, but cornered animals were the most dangerous. Grimsby's hand moved toward his coat, where metal glinted beneath the fabric. "Nobody needs to get hurt here." His voice carried a new edge. "We can all walk away from this." The marshals tensed, hands moving to their weapons. The courtroom had become a powder keg waiting for a spark. "Where are the children?" Sterling's voice remained steady. "Tommy Chen and the others. Where are they being held?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Maggie stepped forward suddenly, her small voice cutting through the tension. "I know where they are." All eyes turned to her. She stood straighter, meeting Grimsby's gaze without flinching. "You took them to the deep mines, northwest of town. My mama told me about that place before she died." Grimsby's face twisted with rage. "Your mama was a lying whore who got what she deserved." The words hit Zeke like a physical blow. Beside him, Maggie recoiled as if she'd been struck, but her eyes didn't fill with tears. They hardened into something cold and determined. "She was trying to protect those children, just like I'm trying to protect them now. Those children are mine to do with as I please, same as this whole town." Grimsby's veneer of civility finally cracked completely. "I built this place from nothing. I decide who lives and who dies." The confession hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then Sterling moved, her hand lightning fast as she drew her weapon. "Beauregard Grimsby, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and child trafficking." But Grimsby was already moving. His gun cleared his coat as he backed toward the window, using the judge as a human shield. "The children die if you follow me. All of them. One word from me, and that mine becomes their tomb." Sterling froze. The marshals held their positions. Grimsby had found the one threat that would stop them cold. "Let me go, and maybe some of them survive. Follow me, and they all die." He was at the window now, gun pressed against Judge Wickham's temple. Below, horses waited in the street, an escape route planned long in advance. "You have 1 hour to clear out of town. After that, those children start having accidents." Grimsby shoved the judge away and vaulted through the window. Hooves thundered on the street as he rode hard toward the mountains. Sterling cursed under her breath. The marshals were already moving, organizing pursuit. But Grimsby had a head start and knew the territory. "He's going to kill them," Maggie whispered. "All of those children." Zeke knelt beside her, his hands on her shoulders. "We'll stop him." "How?" "He's got too much of a lead." Sterling overheard them. "There's a back trail through Devil's Canyon. Cuts the distance in half if you know the way." "I know it." Zeke's military training was reasserting itself, tactical thinking overriding emotion. "But it's dangerous. One wrong step and you're buzzard food. Those children don't have time for safe routes." Maggie pulled away from his hands. "I'm coming. With you?" "Absolutely not. You need me. I know the mine layout. Mama drew me pictures, told me stories about working there." Her chin set in that stubborn line he'd learned to recognize. You can't save them without me. Sterling looked between them, calculating odds and options. The girl's right. We need someone who knows the interior. She's 11 years old, and she's the only chance those children have. The weight of decision pressed down on Zeke again. Take Maggie into danger or leave her behind while other children died. Either choice carried consequences he wasn't sure he could live with, but Maggie had already made her choice. She was moving toward the door, her small frame carrying the determination of someone twice her age. "We're wasting time," she said. "Those children are depending on us." Sterling was already organizing her men, dividing forces between pursuit and rescue. The courtroom emptied rapidly, leaving only dust motes dancing in the disturbed air. Outside, horses stamped and snorted, sensing the urgency of their riders. The sky had clouded over, promising rain before nightfall. Weather that would make the canyon trail treacherous but might also cover their approach. Zeke helped Maggie into the saddle, his hands lingering on the reins. She looked so small against the horse's bulk, so fragile for the task ahead. "If something happens to me in there, you ride out, you understand? Don't look back." Her green eyes met his with absolute certainty. "We're family now. Family doesn't leave each other behind." The words cut deeper than any blade. She believed it completely. This fierce little girl who'd claimed him as her father, who trusted him to keep her safe while they rode into the heart of darkness. Thunder rumbled in the distance as they spurred their horses toward the mountains. Behind them, Copper Creek grew smaller until it disappeared entirely. Ahead lay Devil's Canyon and the choices that would define them both. Devil's Canyon cut through the mountains like a scar left by God's own hand. The trail clung to rock faces that dropped into shadows deeper than memory. Rain began falling as they descended, turning dust to treacherous mud. Maggie rode ahead, her small form bent low against the weather. She knew these paths from her mother's stories, navigating by instinct and inherited knowledge. Behind her, Zeke followed with military precision, every sense alert for ambush. The mine entrance yawned before them like a mouth full of broken, timber supports sagged under years of neglect and hasty construction. The air that flowed from its depths carried the scent of fear and desperation. "Guards?" Zeke whispered. "Two at the entrance, more inside." Maggie's voice was steady, but her hands shook as she dismounted. "They won't expect us to come from above." They left the horses hidden in a grove of scrub pine. The approach required crawling across loose shale that shifted underfoot with every movement. One misplaced step would send rocks cascading down the mountainside, announcing their presence to everyone within miles. The guards sat beside a small fire, rifles across their knees. They looked bored, confident in their isolation. Men who'd grown careless through routine. Zeke circled wide, using shadows and terrain to mask his movement. His war training reasserted itself, muscle memory guiding him through tactics learned in blood and necessity. These weren't soldiers. They were bullies who'd never faced real opposition. The first guard went down quietly, Zeke's arm around his throat until consciousness fled. The second barely had time to register the threat before he joined his partner in forced sleep. Maggie emerged from the rocks, her eyes taking in the unconscious men without flinching. The children are deeper inside, past the main workings. They secured the guards and moved into the mine's throat. Lamp oil cast dancing shadows on walls that wept moisture and despair. The tunnels branched and twisted, following veins of ore, into the mountain's heart. Voices echoed from ahead. Adult voices raised in anger and frustration, Grimsby's men, arguing about something that had gone wrong. "Lost 3 of them in the night," one voice complained. "Little rats found a crack in the back wall. Could be anywhere by now. Boss ain't gonna like that. Says we can't afford to lose any more workers." Zeke and Maggie exchanged glances. Some of the children had escaped on their own, finding freedom in the mountain's hidden spaces, but others remained trapped, waiting for rescue or death. The main chamber opened before them like a cathedral built for suffering. Wooden platforms connected different levels of workings. Bucket lines carried ore up from deeper shafts. and huddled in makeshift cages, a dozen children waited in silent terror. Tommy Chen pressed his face against the bars, recognition flaring in his eyes when he saw them. Other faces appeared, hope warring with learned helplessness. They'd been taught that rescue was impossible, that resistance only brought pain. Grimsby stood on an elevated platform, his expensive clothes incongruous in the industrial setting. He held a lantern high, its light catching the desperation in the children's eyes. "You came," he called out, his voice echoing off stone walls. "I wasn't sure you would. Most people choose themselves over strangers." Zeke stepped into the light, hands visible and empty. "Let them go. Your fight's with me. My fight is with anyone who threatens what I've built." Grimsby's free hand moved to his gun. "These children are part of my operation. Property, you might say. They're human beings. They're resources. Nothing more." Grimsby's mask had fallen away completely, revealing the predator beneath. "Their labor pays for my civilization. Their sacrifice enables progress." Maggie moved beside Zeke, her small frame dwarfed by the chamber's vastness, but her voice carried, clearly when she spoke. "My mama worked in this place. She told me stories about the darkness down here, about men who forgot their souls in pursuit of gold. Your mama was weak. She let sentiment cloud her judgment. She was brave, braver than you'll ever be." Grimsby's laugh was hollow, echoing, off stone walls like the sound of bones breaking. "Brave? She died coughing up blood in a shack barely fit for animals. Where was her bravery then? She used it to protect these children, to make sure someone would come for them. And here you are, come to die in the same place she worked." The confrontation balanced on the edge of violence. Grimsby's finger moved toward his trigger. The children pressed themselves against the bars, sensing the moment when words would give way to action. Then Maggie spoke again, her voice carrying a weight that seemed impossible for someone so young. "I need to tell you something, Papa Zeke, about who I really am." Zeke's eyes never left Grimsby, but he heard the change in her tone, the careful formality she used when preparing to reveal difficult truths. "I'm probably not Jonathan Blackwood's daughter. Mama worked for his family, found the real papers after he died. She was trying to stop the land stealing when she got poisoned. The admission hit him like a physical blow. Their entire partnership had been built on a lie. The inheritance, the legal claim, the hope of justice through proper channels. All of it fiction. I just needed someone to believe in me long enough to save these children. Mama made me promise to stop him before more families got hurt." Grimsby's laughter filled the chamber, cruel and triumphant. "You hear that, Thornfield? The little rat played you from the beginning, used your grief against you." But Zeke felt no anger, only admiration for the courage it must have taken to trust a broken stranger with such a desperate gambit. She'd protected him from the full weight of the danger, while maneuvering him into position to make a difference. "Doesn't change anything," he said quietly. "What? You're still my daughter. Blood doesn't make family, choice does." Maggie's intake of breath was audible even over the mind's ambient sounds. The words hung between them, more binding than any legal document. "How touching," Grimsby sneered. "A family reunion in a tomb." Sounds echoed from the tunnel behind them. Boots on stone, voices calling out coordinates. Sterling and her marshals had found the entrance. Grimsby's face twisted with rage. "You led them straight to me. They were coming anyway. Only question was whether the children would still be alive when they arrived. Well then, let's settle that question now." Grimsby raised his lantern high, then hurled it toward the wooden supports that held up the chamber's ceiling. Glass shattered. Oil spread in burning rivulets across dry timber. Fire raced up the supports, eating through wood weakened by years of moisture and neglect. The children's cages sat directly beneath the largest beam, their occupants screaming as flames reached toward them. Zeke moved without thinking, his body responding to crisis with trained efficiency. He reached the first cage as burning debris began falling around them. The lock was sturdy, but desperation gave him strength beyond his normal limits. Maggie worked beside him, her small hands guiding frightened children toward the tunnel that led to safety. She moved among them like a shepherd protecting her flock, her voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. The ceiling groaned ominously. More supports caught fire, their structural integrity failing by degrees. They had minutes at most before the entire chamber collapsed. "This way," Maggie called, leading the rescued children toward a narrow passage she'd spotted earlier. "Stay low. Follow my voice." Tommy Chen helped the smaller children, his own fear overcome by the need to protect others. The group moved as one organism, survival instinct overriding panic. Grimsby appeared through the smoke, his gun drawn and desperation making him reckless. "If I can't have them, nobody can." Zeke stepped between the fleeing children and their tormentor. The distance was too great for accuracy in the shifting light and smoke, but sometimes courage mattered more than skill. The confrontation lasted seconds. Grimsby fired wild, his shots going wide in the chaotic environment. Zeke closed the distance with steady purpose, his military training serving him one final time. When the smoke cleared, Grimsby lay unconscious beside the ruins of his operation. The children were safe in the outer tunnel, breathing clean air, and feeling sunlight on their faces for the first time in weeks. Sterling and her marshals secured the scene, gathering evidence that would ensure justice reached beyond one corrupt mayor. The network of exploitation stretched across territories, but its foundation had crumbled with Grimsby's capture. 6 months later, Zeke stood on the porch of a small ranch house watching Maggie practice her reading in the afternoon sun. The legal adoption had been completed without ceremony, just paperwork acknowledging what their hearts had already decided. "Tell me about Emma," Maggie said, setting aside her book. The request no longer brought pain. Emma's memory had found its proper place, honored but not imprisoning. "She would have liked you, always wanted a little sister. Think she would have approved of you taking in a street rat who lied about everything? She would have understood why you did it. Emma always knew the difference between necessary lies and cruel ones." The sun painted the mountains gold as it settled toward the horizon. Copper Creek had healed under Sheriff Sterling's leadership, becoming the community Jonathan Blackwood had originally envisioned. Children played in streets where fear had once ruled. Dr. Hartwell had adopted Tommy Chen, giving him the medical education his quick mind deserved. Other rescued children had found homes with families who understood the value of second chances. "Papa Zeke?" He turned toward Maggie's voice. "Thank you for pretending to be my daddy until it became real. Thank you for being brave enough to ask." The words settled between them like seeds in fertile ground, growing into something stronger than blood, more binding than law, family built by choice rather than chance, tested by fire and strengthened by truth. In the distance, church bells marked the end of another day in a town where justice had finally found its voice, where children slept safely in beds instead of cages, where love had proven stronger than greed, where a broken man and a desperate girl had found their way home to each other. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.